I've talked to people about this, and it's like, Jesus, like, they're trying to get the documents, like, when they're trying to get the Epstein files. Like in New York State, one of the DAs was hiding documents. They had to force them to get the documents. I think there are so many powerful people on those lists. There are so many powerful people who went and partied, quote unquote partied. And how many of them went to Diddy's parties? Have we been paying attention to the trial? Oh yeah, crazy, crazy trials with Ghislaine, with Epstein, with Diddy. Either Diddy's going to commit suicide, or he's going to hide somewhere where we won't know anything for many, many years. Or he's going to be O.J. Simpson and get released, and they'll say, I told you he was so innocent. I told you nothing happened. I told you it was that. Or he's going to jail and spend the rest of his life in jail. Unlikely, because he has access to a lot of information about a lot of people who generate a lot of money for Hollywood. Do they want those people to disappear? I don't know. What once seemed like just another celebrity legal dispute is now being revealed as one of the most disturbing scandals of the decade. The name Shawn "Diddy" Combs, once associated with music and luxury, is being dragged into the center of an investigation that is taking on chilling proportions with each new piece of information revealed. Familiar faces like Cassie Ventura's end up entangled in a web of revelations that looks more like a conspiracy plot than a simple judicial process. It all began with a lawsuit filed by Cassie, but that action quickly became the tip of the iceberg. What looked like an individual accusation came to be interpreted as part of something much deeper and darker. We're talking about a structure reminiscent of networks of domination, silence, and hidden power. The gravity of the accusations transcends personal conduct and enters a territory where mind control, exploitation, and bribery seem to be part of a very well-articulated system. Many are already drawing parallels with the Jeffrey Epstein case, not only because of the influential figures involved, but because of the pattern of impunity and shielding around the accused. Federal authorities, now directly involved in the investigation, point to a series of crimes that go far beyond what was thought. Kidnapping, arson, witness intimidation, bribery, forced labor, distribution of illegal substances, and more. The case, which already dominated the news, now takes on even darker undertones. Everything indicates that Diddy wasn't acting alone. There are signs of a network behind him, perhaps protected by powerful interests operating behind the scenes. Whispers about a secret organization operating similarly to the one that protected Epstein are growing louder. The question lingering in the air is, was Diddy being protected by an invisible force? And if so, would that force now be willing to sacrifice him to protect other, more powerful names? The feeling is that a veil has been lifted, revealing a scenario where what's at stake goes far beyond a single name. And that's where the plot reaches a new level of weirdness. Patrick Bet-David, an influential analyst, raised a point that caught attention for its at least curious coincidence. The new prosecutor responsible for the case is none other than the daughter of James Comey, former FBI director. Coincidentally, not. Comey recently made an enigmatic post on social media that many interpreted as a veiled reference to former President Donald Trump. This only further fueled theories about political interference and hidden interests surrounding the case against Diddy. Another detail that sparked even more distrust was the sudden departure of the previous prosecutor, Damian Williams. Sources suggest he may have been discreetly removed from the case. He had already led prosecutions against big names like Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, and was also initially in charge of the Diddy indictment. But in December 2024, he announced his departure, citing personal reasons. Shortly after, he was replaced by Maureen Comey, daughter of James Comey, the same man embroiled in controversies during the Trump investigations. Too many coincidences. And it doesn't end there. The internet is on fire after Patrick Bet-David hinted that perhaps Diddy had powerful protection for many years, linked to the beverage giant Diageo, the same company with which he had an intense legal battle. Diddy accused the company of neglecting the De Leon brand, discriminatory behavior, and marginalizing his image as an entrepreneur. The lawsuit was settled in January 2024 with a confidential agreement, and 2 months later, the world saw federal law enforcement raiding Diddy's mansions in Miami and Los Angeles. The timing left many suspicious. Could Diageo have been the silent shield that kept Diddy intact for so many years? The company, whose current CEO is Deborah Crew, a former military intelligence officer, quietly ended its relationship with the artist shortly before the federal offensive. By breaking that alliance, did they clear the way for justice to finally act? No one is claiming anything for sure, but the signs point to a strategic move. Cut ties with Diddy before the bomb exploded. That distancing could have been a message. We know what's coming, we don't want to be involved. In other words, maybe the agreement was just a way to end the relationship before the public collapse. And that's exactly what happened. In March 2024, just 2 months after the end of the legal dispute, authorities raided his properties. The timing, for many, is not just suspicious, it's revealing. The buzz grew even louder when big names like Joe Rogan entered the conversation. During his podcast, Rogan directly compared Diddy's case to Epstein's, recalling how prosecutors and authorities went as far as hiding important documents to protect influential figures. He stressed that behind the scenes of these major events, there are almost always very powerful people involved. People who attended the parties, did business together, and who today fear being exposed. Rogan got straight to the point. The famous parties hosted by Diddy perhaps hid more than they appeared. He believes many of those events, filled with celebrities and millionaires, could have served as a stage for deals, blackmail, and even illegal acts. The real fear now is not just what will happen to Diddy, but how many other well-known figures might fall with him. As the trial intensifies, fear grows behind the scenes. There's a strong possibility that high-level names, artists, entrepreneurs, politicians will come to light. The question that resonates is, how many of them were at the parties? How many knew what was happening behind the curtains? And more importantly, how far do these connections go? Joe Rogan didn't hold back, suggesting that if investigations continue, at the current pace, Diddy could end up behind bars for a long time. But at the same time, he issued a grim warning. Will this case end up like Epstein's? Big headlines, explosive accusations, but no real justice. To this day, none of the high-powered figures linked to Epstein have been held accountable. And now everyone is wondering, will we see the same story repeat itself? A trial with promises of shocking revelations that ends in absolute silence. Are we facing another smokescreen to protect the untouchables? Or will the veil truly be lifted this time? Joe Rogan himself posed an even more disturbing hypothesis. Did Diddy really plan everything alone? How could someone set up such a complex scheme involving intoxicated celebrities, decadent parties, and sordid practices without a support structure behind him? Rogan stated it's unlikely a single individual could coordinate all that without help. Think about the scenario. Closed venues, restricted access, total secrecy. It all points to something bigger than just the control of a lone kingpin. Perhaps Diddy was just a piece in a larger machine, working with other people or even serving the interests of a darker group. In the end, organizing parties where no one can use cell phones, with cameras installed everywhere, and still ensuring no one escapes being recorded, requires logistics that transcend individual efforts. At a certain point in the trial, chilling accounts emerged. One of the deponents, who identified as a sex worker, described encounters orchestrated by Diddy with his then-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. According to him, he was hired to have intimate relations with Cassie in Diddy's presence, while Diddy watched, hidden behind the scenes. Instead of using explicit terms, let's just say the testimony revealed a scenario of planned humiliation, prolonged encounters lasting from a few hours to almost an entire day, all under Diddy's gaze, who recorded every moment. Details like these caused a general shock in court, even among lawyers accustomed to heavy cases. The video recordings documenting these acts show they weren't sporadic episodes, but a systematic pattern. This reinforces the theory that behind it all, there was a method of coercion and sexual exploitation, aligned with crimes of trafficking and witness tampering, according to the sex trafficking and racketeering complaint filed by the prosecution. As investigations advance, new names linked to this web of intrigue emerge. The defense brought to light possible links of Kid Cudi and Michael B. Jordan, suggesting Cassie might have had personal or professional relationships with them. These alleged connections would have fueled Diddy's jealousy, triggering a series of disagreements that, according to the defense's version, culminated in an explosion of rage from the singer. In this narrative, one particular episode, known as a freak-off by those who frequent musical circles, would have been the trigger, as it would be the moment Diddy allegedly discovered intimacy between Cassie and Kid Cudi. Imagine the conflict. Diddy, already suspecting betrayals, confronts Cassie upon noticing that, according to the defense, she had become involved with other renowned artists. The clash of emotions would have unleashed a violent fight, with insults, shoves, and a scene difficult to describe in detail. Of course, in a trial with accusations as serious as kidnapping, bribery, and sex trafficking, any disagreement between the couple takes on dramatic nuances. But in this case, it was precisely that explosion of jealousy that the defense intends to use to justify behaviors that, according to them, would have stemmed from deep emotional distress. These behind-the-scenes details make it clear that the show Diddy put on might have been much bigger than it appeared, not just parties full of drugs and luxury, but a mechanism of psychological domination. Rogan speculated that it was all part of a meticulously planned system to attract celebrities, expose them to high-risk situations like sedatives and coercion, and then use that material to manipulate or blackmail. In other words, a power script that goes beyond the figure of Diddy and points towards someone or a group capable of maintaining that scheme for years, ensuring nothing came to light. The sex worker's testimony, a more appropriate term than prostitute, to avoid sensitive words, revealed another alarming detail. The episode where Cassie was allegedly directed to perform intimate acts with said professional, all under Diddy's permission. Accounts indicate that in reserved places, Cassie would appear in specific outfits, and the agreed amount was transferred as payment, reinforcing the idea that these were not consensual encounters, but an exploitation machine. The cruelest element. Diddy, according to the witness, recorded the scenes and kept the videos as if they were trophies, creating an archive of humiliation and control. Given this information, it's clear that the prosecution's focus is not just on proving Diddy's guilt in isolated cases, but on demonstrating that he headed a criminal organization, using coercion, bribery, and even violence to obtain sexual favors. This prosecution strategy, centered on international trafficking and racketeering, reveals the seriousness of the crimes, goes far beyond a simple celebrity scandal. With new characters being mentioned, like Kid Cudi and Michael B. Jordan, the narrative becomes even more complex. The defense tries to cast doubt on the image of a sole victim, alleging that Cassie wasn't merely passive, but a partner who betrayed Diddy with other artists, awakening in him a fury that led to violence. They want to show the jury that Diddy's acts would have been motivated by a mix of personal resentment and betrayal, not by a dominant desire to create a scheme of abuse. Thus, as the trial progresses, the story unfolds in multiple layers. On one hand, testimonies describing coercion, illicit recordings, and abuse of power. On the other, the defense trying to reframe Diddy's behavior as the fruit of a betrayed and deceived man. This clash of versions, criminal organization versus marital drama, makes the case even more fascinating and unsettling, as it questions the boundary between consent, manipulation, and exploitation. One way or another, the details revealed to the public go far beyond what we imagined. Each testimony, each new piece of evidence, seems to reveal a scenario where the line between party, crime, and conspiracy is thin. And in the midst of it, all celebrities whose images were tied to glamour, end up being seen as pieces in a dark power game. In the end, if the court accepts the thesis that Diddy operated a scheme of blackmail and control, there will be no doubt that the damage caused by this network was much greater than supposed. Another aspect that gained prominence is the link between Cassie and a man named Kid Cudi. According to testimony, Cassie allegedly participated in a freak-off, a kind of clandestine party filled with drugs and extreme behaviors. When Diddy discovered she was maintaining a relationship with this artist, imagine the scene. Cassie, amidst the chaos of that celebration, seduced by the unbridled atmosphere. While behind the scenes, Diddy accesses her phone and discovers messages exchanged with Kid Cudi. The revelation provoked an explosive reaction. The mere idea that his partner was cheating on him in such public and shameful circumstances made Diddy consumed by fury. During cross-examination, the defense attorney tried to minimize the seriousness of the events, questioning Cassie about details she, visibly affected, said she couldn't remember due to the passage of time and her altered state from substance abuse. In one of the tensest moments, the defender even insinuated that this blur in her memories was a product of excessive drug use at that time. This type of strategy has been recurrent in the defense's tactics, to cast doubt on Cassie's credibility by alleging she was in a mental state that affected her memory, and therefore her version of events. Next on the stand was David James, Diddy's former personal assistant. Visibly affected, he described what he experienced upon entering that environment dominated by fear and control. On his very first day of work, he was bluntly told, "This is Diddy's kingdom. We are all here to serve him." That warning, far from being an exaggeration, was the unwritten rule that governed every decision within that structure. David spoke about nights that seemed endless, where he observed Diddy commanding everything from behind the scenes, distributing tasks, ordering drinking sprees, and in many cases, coordinating degrading situations to satisfy whims. Every gesture conveyed the same message. Whoever opposed wouldn't last long. The testimony progressed to describe David's relationship with Cassie. There were moments when he tried to talk to her, out of Combs's sight, to warn her that this world was toxic. "You're trapped," he once whispered, noticing the fear in Cassie's eyes. According to David, Diddy controlled every aspect of her life, career, finances, and even where she lived. It was as if Cassie had no autonomy, not even to choose what clothes to wear. Combs decided everything. When David asked why she didn't leave Cassie in tears, explained she couldn't break up with him because Diddy had control over her bank card, her music contract, and even her rent. In other words, she was a hostage of a system that prevented any attempt to escape, whether due to fear or financial dependence. When David left the courtroom that day, an emblematic moment occurred. As he passed Diddy, they exchanged a brief nod, a silent sign of acknowledgement. This further marked those present, as it made clear that, although affected, David still feared repercussions from the music mogul. Right after, Cy Down Richards, a former member of one of Diddy's backup bands, took the stand. Her face, still marked by the past, conveyed the terror that came to light in her testimony. She recalled an episode in 2009 at the Los Angeles mansion where Diddy allegedly assaulted Cassie, all because the singer was late serving him dinner. The next day, Diddy directly addressed Cassie and other band colleagues, warning them with a mix of serious and threatening tones not to comment on what they had witnessed. According to her, Combs literally said that whoever spoke about what happened would disappear. It wasn't a metaphor. It was an explicit threat of disappearance. That warning resonated strongly, as it indicated that Diddy not only watched his employees, but also maintained a network of intimidation to silence anyone who dared to reveal his true face. The prosecution highlighted that this threat clearly reveals Diddy's awareness of his actions. By saying that whoever reported him would disappear, he showed he knew exactly the extent of his crimes and was prepared to use fear as his main weapon of coercion. This type of intimidation, prosecutors proved, is part of a modus operandi that involves kidnappings, theft of evidence, and threats to hide the truth. In other words, it wasn't just an isolated branch, it was a deep root of violence. Suspicions became even more unsettling when news emerged that a third, anonymously identified victim, who was about to testify, simply disappeared. This woman, who had offered to testify against Diddy, vanished mysteriously. Her face, kept secret to preserve her safety, was never seen again. No clues about her whereabouts were revealed. The timing couldn't be more sinister. A few days before her testimony, she cut off contact with lawyers and family. The sudden apathy raised several hypotheses. Did Diddy intervene? Was there coercion? Authorities so far confirm they are searching for the missing witness but are not revealing details so as not to affect the investigations. Given what happened, the prosecution requested to postpone the trial, arguing that the absence of this crucial testimony jeopardized the development of the process. Diddy's defenders, on the other hand, spoke of the possibility of nullifying part of the evidence, but most experts believe that a single absent witness is unlikely to bring down the entire case, although it may cause significant delays. It's reported that Diddy has already hired private investigators to monitor potential witnesses, pressure family members, and, according to rumors, even offer money in exchange for silence. If this type of action is confirmed, it would reinforce the theory that Diddy has a structure designed to eliminate threats, whether by force or economic coercion. Amidst all this, a longtime associate known as Big Gomi decided to break his silence and exposed an even darker side. In this latest testimony, he didn't mince words. According to him, over the years, people who got too close to the truth simply ceased to exist. Big Gomi said he believes this new disappearance is directly related to a protection network Diddy allegedly maintains to prevent compromising information from getting out. He assured that strange things will continue to happen, both inside and outside the court, hinting that brave witnesses may sooner or later be in danger. This testimony from Big Gomi raises a central question. How far does the reach of this power network extend? If even those who dare to speak can be silenced, what is the level of influence Diddy has over authorities and those closest to him? The process makes it clear that this isn't just a legal dispute between an artist and his ex-partners, but something much larger, a structure of coercion, blackmail, and destruction of evidence that could involve influential figures both inside and outside the music industry. Faced with this scenario, the hearing, which should be a simple procedural act, transforms into a confrontation between radically opposing versions. On one side, evidence of coercion, intimidation, and witness disappearance. On the other, the defense's version attempting to portray Diddy as a victim of jealousy and accusations motivated by resentment. As the net closes, more names may emerge, more connections will be revealed, and the fear that the truth will be devoured by silence continues to grow. At the heart of this whirlwind remains the question resonating in the courthouse corridors. How could a single person create and maintain an apparatus of fear capable of silencing so many voices? And more importantly, who would be willing to confront that power and reveal everything behind the curtain? The answer may lie in the upcoming hearings, but for now, the mystery remains, and each testimony, each piece of evidence, and each accusation reveals only the tip of an iceberg that seems to have no end. And with a voice that seemed to come from a nightmare, Big Gomi issued a grim warning. Things have already started. According to him, whenever a trial of this caliber approaches, a predictable sequence of sinister events comes into play. People disappear, evidence vanishes, and key witnesses are suddenly removed from the board like sacrificial pawns. One of those names is that of a male sex worker who, according to internal sources, allegedly handed over compromising tapes to the federal government. Now, he has simply disappeared, without explanation, without a trace. A terrifying repetition of What happened in the Tory Lanez case when the security guard whose DNA was on the weapon mysteriously vanished? Big Gomi stated with almost prophetic regret that we are just at the beginning of a much darker spiral. He also predicted that Diddy's defense team will try, at all costs, to rebuild the mogul's image, something that, in fact, is reportedly already underway. Commenting on the essence of this scandal, Big Gomi didn't hold back. In an outburst laden with indignation, he said that when a man like Diddy, surrounded by fame, fortune, and adoration, sinks into vices like drugs, power, and dark desires, he not only loses control, he loses his own humanity. For Big Gomi, what's at stake are not simple mistakes or bad judgments. What Diddy represents now, according to him, is something deeper, more twisted, and frankly, perverse. He's evil, he said coldly. His behavior is monstrous. With those words, the already shattered image of the once revered producer splintered. Even further, Big Gomi went further, pointing out that Diddy, for over 2 decades, allegedly abused ecstasy, the drug known as the love drug. But the result, according to him, was anything but loving. That kind of substance distorts the perception of reality, especially sexually. It transformed him into a deviant. And then came the sentence that left many in shock. What kind of man wants to see another man urinating in his own wife's mouth? That's not addiction, that's evil. But perhaps the most disturbing thing of all is the hypothesis raised by Big Gomi. Diddy might not be alone behind the scenes. There could be someone even more powerful, someone who not only benefited from the distorted empire Diddy built, but helped shape it. And worse, this hidden figure might still be actively working to protect the man at the center of it all. It wouldn't just be a matter of loyalty. It would be an operation to preserve a much larger system. This kind of power doesn't appear in headlines. It operates in the shadows. Silences witnesses, rewrites narratives, destroys reputations, creates invisible enemies, all so that the true mentor never has to face the light of day. As the case explodes before the world's eyes, a new question hangs in the air. Was Diddy really the mastermind behind it all, or just the visible face of a much more complex scheme? On the surface, everything seems to point to a man with an out-of-control ego, limitless money, and absolute power. But when we connect the dots, disappearing witnesses, deals sealed with non-disclosure agreements, connections to the elite, and disturbing echoes of the Epstein case, the picture begins to transform. Diddy allegedly reached the top in a terrifyingly calculated way. And just like Epstein, he seems to have been shielded by forces that surpass any legal logic. These are the same whispers heard about Epstein, now resonating in Diddy's trial. Powerful, aims hidden behind confidentiality agreements, convenient immunities, and deafening silences. And if history has taught us anything, it's this. Powerful predators rarely act alone. They are funded, protected, and sustained by invisible networks formed by people with much to lose and everything to hide. So while Diddy is burned in the public square, the real danger may be far from the cameras, operating in the shadows, manipulating behind the scenes, ensuring the most dangerous truths never come to light. Because if this case ends like Epstein's, inconclusive, unresolved, with the main names intact, it won't just be a failure of justice. It will be confirmation that certain secrets are too big to be revealed, and that some people are simply too powerful to fall. This story has already outgrown Diddy. Now we're dealing with the machine behind him, the same machine that once protected Epstein until it couldn't anymore. And if we don't keep watching, questioning, and demanding answers, it will remain active, hiding monsters and erasing victims. So, the question that remains is, do you really believe Diddy did all this alone? Or is there someone even more protected, pulling the strings from behind? Are we witnessing another Epstein-level scheme, where one man falls only to protect the true architects of terror? The signs are all there. Disappearances, threats, silent manipulations. Now it's up to you. What do you think? Is Diddy the mastermind behind it all, or just the scapegoat for something even more sinister? Yeah,